The best chess player in the world, Magnus Carlsen almost never loses, winning almost every tournament he's ever taken part in. But these are rare instances where deadly players you wouldn't expect have demolished Magnus in a matter of seconds. Starting with this game where Magnus played against Gukesh, who is the current world champion. Magnus's opponent was not just anybody, and when the clock turned on, Gukesh started the game by moving his pawn to e4, which Magnus responds to by moving his pawn to e5. And after the first few moves are played, the game turns into a Ruy Lopez opening, which Black responds with the Berlin defense, a knight on f6. Gukesh plays d3, the anti-Berlin. Magnus goes bishop c5, which Gukesh responds with c3, preparing d4, and Magnus castles, and Gukesh also castles. After a few seconds of thinking, Magnus plays his pawn to d6, opening up his light square bishop. Because Gukesh has the white pieces he really needs to win this game. Gukesh moves his pawn to h3. Magnus attacks Gukesh's bishop with a6, which Gukesh responds with bishop a4. Here Magnus have a lot of options, but he goes with h6, stopping Gukesh's bishop. Interestingly enough, Gukesh seems to have a slight advantage here, and Magnus doesn't seem to be content with his position, but this would soon change, as over the next few moves, Magnus starts creating a bit of an attack. First, Magnus drops his bishop back, avoiding a tempo against d4. Gukesh has many different ideas, and knight d2 makes the most sense because knight will jump from d2 to f1 to g3, and Magnus goes knight e7, maneuvering this knight to a better square. Gukesh strikes with a4, going after the queen side, which Magnus responds with rook b8. Magnus is preparing an extremely dangerous attack, and Gukesh must defend this perfectly if he wants to win. Gukesh strikes with d4, trying to open up the position, but Magnus goes knight g6, maintaining his structure here. And after the few more moves, the queens are traded. With 24 minutes on the clock, Gukesh is losing. h4 by Magnus, kicking the knight away, but Gukesh goes after the rook. The idea here is if you take my knight, I take back, the knight goes away, and the bishop is hanging. Gukesh wants to bring his rook in to infiltrate Magnus's position, but it is too late. Magnus already has too much positional advantage. A few moves later, Magnus forces another trade with bishop takes d6, and after a long sequence of juggling around pieces, Magnus makes a big blunder, f6, allowing Gukesh to give a check with rook. f3, Magnus goes king e2, Gukesh checks with rook. a2, Magnus blocks this with the rook. Rook takes, king takes, and knight e4 check. Magnus goes e2, attacking the rook, and Gukesh defends with the king. Magnus attacks the knight with d5, but this gives a free pawn. Magnus down to 1 minute goes rook f8, and Gukesh plays the excellent move. Rook f2, forcing Magnus to go king e1. Gukesh goes knight d7, attacking the rook, and Magnus plays knight e2 check. A big blunder. Gukesh takes the knight and then the rook. And after a long sequence of juggling around pieces, Magnus here has no option but to resign. And then this happened.